Private First Class Anya Sharma adjusted her patrol cap, the brim doing little to shield her eyes from the relentless glare bouncing off the asphalt of Naval Station Norfolk. The October air was deceptively crisp. The sun still held the memory of summer's heat. The base was a symphony of controlled chaos. Supply trucks rumbled toward the docks. Squadrons of sailors jogged in formation along the perimeter road, and a steady, unending stream of vehicles inched toward the main gate where she stood her post. To most soldiers, gate duty was the very definition of monotony. It was a cycle of checking IDs, offering the same rehearsed greetings, and enduring long, lonely hours in the elements. It was, as her squad mates often joked, babysitting a barricade with a rifle. But Anya didn't see it that way. For her, the gate was the physical manifestation of responsibility. It was the first line of defense, the precise point where the civilian world ended and the Navy's most vital assets began. Every person who walked or drove past her checkpoint wasn't just entering a base. They were entering a protected space filled with classified operations, billion-dollar equipment, and thousands of men and women who had sworn an oath to their country. The immense weight of that knowledge kept her spine straight, her eyes perpetually alert, and her tone unfailingly crisp. "Next vehicle," she called, her voice steady as she stepped forward. A dusty pickup truck rolled into position. The driver, a petty officer with salt and pepper hair and tired eyes, handed her his ID. She scanned it with a practiced, fluid motion, her eyes flicking from the photo to his face, confirming his access before returning it with a polite, professional nod. "You're good to go, sir." "Thank you, Private," he said, the truck rolling forward to join the flow of traffic inside. Anya's boots shifted slightly on the warm pavement. She resisted the urge to roll her shoulders or stretch her neck. Discipline, she reminded herself. Maintain your bearing, even in discomfort. A pair of Marines stationed at a nearby guard post weren't nearly as rigid. She caught snippets of their conversation between the rumble of engines. Jokes about last night's bar crawl, complaints about the length of their shift, a loud laugh about how nothing ever happens at this stupid gate. Anya ignored them. She had learned early in basic training that focus was a weapon. When her drill instructors had barked commands, when the training field was a maelstrom of simulated chaos, the recruits who thrived weren't necessarily the strongest or the loudest. They were the ones who could lock in, who could tune out the endless distractions and execute every order with unwavering precision. That mindset had carried her through the crucible of basic, and it carried her now through the slow burn of gate duty. She scanned the next ID, memorizing the face before handing it back. The line of vehicles stretched far beyond the barricades, each one a small test of her vigilance. One forged credential, one overlooked anomaly, one moment of complacency, and the consequences could ripple far beyond her post. Still, boredom was an insidious enemy, creeping in like a fog, probing for any weakness in her resolve. The relentless rhythm of cars and IDs created a lulling, hypnotic pattern, and Anya fought it with small, internal rituals. She would straighten her shoulders after every third vehicle. She would shift her weight only at the halfway mark of an hour. She would silently recite the general orders of sentry when her mind began to drift. She wasn't here to simply coast through a shift. She was here to earn respect, though she deeply doubted anyone even noticed her efforts. That thought stung more than she was willing to admit. She had enlisted with a fire in her chest, a fierce desire to prove herself, to be part of something larger. But in the weeks since arriving at Norfolk, her role had been reduced to this, standing watch day after day at the same gate. Meanwhile, others in her unit were rotating through more prestigious assignments, working in secure facilities, shadowing high-ranking officers, assisting with critical logistics. She wondered if her superiors doubted her potential, or if this was simply the thankless lot of newcomer, the dues everyone had to pay. "Next vehicle," she said firmly, pushing the corrosive doubt aside. A sedan rolled forward. A civilian contractor leaned out of the window, handing her his credentials with a distracted glance at his phone. Anya's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. She studied the ID, cross-checked the holographic security strip, then lifted her gaze to meet his. "Sir, I'm going to need you to put the phone down while I verify your access," she said, her tone polite but non-negotiable. The contractor sighed with theatrical annoyance but complied. Anya handed back the card with a clipped, "Thank you." The entire exchange lasted less than 30 seconds, but Anya's pulse had quickened. Complacency was the true enemy. She couldn't let herself slip, not even once, not for a single second. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, baking the pavement and turning the air thick and heavy. Her throat was dry, her stomach hollow, but she remained rooted in place, a statue of discipline. She thought of her grandfather, a retired army sergeant who had drilled into her as a teenager. Respect is built on the foundation of the things you do when no one is watching. Do the small things right, and the big things will naturally follow. Those words had become her private mantra, one she repeated with every ID she checked, every salute she rendered. Yet even she couldn't have imagined how soon, and how publicly, those words would be put to the ultimate test. It began not with a bang, but with a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a hum of anticipation. A black, unmarked SUV appeared at the end of the line, its tinted windows reflecting the harsh sunlight like obsidian mirrors. Something about its mere presence cut through the day's monotony. It wasn't just the vehicle itself, sleek and imposing. It was the way the Marines at the nearby post suddenly straightened their spines, their casual conversation dying mid-sentence. It was the way the flow of traffic seemed to pause, a collective intake of breath. Anya's instincts, honed by her relentless focus, sharpened to a razor's edge. She tracked the SUV as it rolled closer, her grip tightening on her clipboard. Whoever was inside, they mattered. The SUV pulled up to her checkpoint. The driver's window glided down silently, revealing a man in his late 40s with close-cropped hair, a jawline that looked like it was carved from granite, and eyes that radiated a quiet, formidable authority. His uniform was immaculate, the ribbons on his chest a silent, vivid record of battles fought and victories earned. He extended his ID card without a word. Anya's stomach flipped. She knew the name, even if she had never seen the man in person. Commander Julian Thorne. He wasn't just another officer. He was a legend, a decorated Navy SEAL, the commander of the most elite Special Operations Group on the East Coast. His exploits were the stuff of whispers and awe around the base. Stories of impossible missions deep in hostile territory, of soldiers rescued against all odds, of scars hidden beneath his composed, unreadable exterior. He was a man whose presence alone commanded silence and respect. Anya's fingers trembled for half a second before she forced them steady. She examined the ID with painstaking care, scanning the holograms, checking the expiration date, matching the photograph to the stoic face in front of her. Procedure, she reminded herself. No matter who sits in that seat, protocol is protocol. When she returned the card, she did so with crisp, flawless precision. "Thank you, sir. You're cleared to proceed." Thorne didn't immediately drive on. Instead, his piercing eyes lingered on her, studying her unwavering posture, her unshaken tone, the way she had refused to let the gravity of his rank compromise her professionalism. Anya swallowed hard but refused to falter. She held her stance, chin high, her gaze respectful yet firm, meeting his without intimidation. Behind her, she could feel the Marines shifting uneasily, as if bracing for something unusual. And something unusual did happen. The rear door of the SUV opened. Commander Thorne stepped out, his combat boots hitting the pavement with a solid, authoritative thud. The movement sent a ripple of shock through the entire checkpoint. Marines fell silent. Contractors froze in their cars. Even the steady flow of vehicles seemed to pause in collective, breathless anticipation. Anya's pulse roared in her ears like a jet engine. Commanders did not exit their vehicles at the gate. Not for anyone. Not for any reason. Yet here he was, striding toward her with a purpose that seemed to bend the air around him. The sharp, rhythmic cadence of Commander Julian Thorne's boots striking the pavement seemed to silence the world. Every other sound, the whir of idling engines, the distant chatter of sailors, even the drone of cicadas in the nearby trees, faded into a muffled backdrop. All that remained was the heavy authority in his steps as he approached Private First Class Anya Sharma. Her lungs constricted. She had been trained to stand tall under pressure, to face down any threat with unyielding composure. But this was no drill instructor screaming in her ear. This was a living legend, a man whose reputation was forged in the fires of real-world conflict. This was him. Thorne stopped directly in front of her, so close she could see the faint, faded scar that traced the line of his jaw. His eyes, a steely, penetrating gray, held hers for a long moment, measuring her, weighing her worth in that heavy, unnerving silence. Then, with a motion that stunned every soldier within sight, he lifted his hand and rendered a slow, deliberate, perfect salute. Anya froze for the briefest of instants. She wondered if she was hallucinating from the heat, if the relentless October sun had finally cooked her brain. A commander, a decorated SEAL officer of Thorne's stature, was saluting her. A 21-year-old private standing post at the main gate. Her body reacted before her mind could fully catch up. She snapped into position, her own salute a flawless, mirror image of his, executed with the precision that had been drilled into her since her first day of basic training. The air between them seemed to shiver. The Marines along the checkpoint stiffened, their eyes widening in disbelief. A petty officer waiting in the next car whispered to his passenger, "Did he just—" Another hushed him with a sharp elbow to the ribs. The salute lingered. It was not a casual flick of the wrist, not a token gesture of courtesy. It was a deliberate, profound acknowledgement. When Thorne finally lowered his hand, the respect in the act remained, hanging heavy and visible in the humid air. Anya's heart was racing. She wanted to ask why, to understand the meaning behind this unprecedented breach of protocol, but her throat was locked. Soldiers weren't supposed to question commanders, especially not this one. Still, the thought burned inside her. What did he see in me? Thorne didn't speak. He simply gave her the smallest of nods, a gesture so subtle it was almost imperceptible, before turning back toward his vehicle. He climbed in, closed the door with a solid thud, and the black SUV pulled forward through the gate, disappearing onto the base. The silence it left behind shattered like glass. "Holy hell," one of the Marines muttered, his voice filled with awe. "Did that just happen?" "I've been stationed here 6 years," another said, shaking his head in slow motion. "Never, ever have I seen anything like that before." Anya kept her eyes fixed forward, her expression a mask of professional composure, refusing to let the turmoil inside her show. But her thoughts swirled like a storm. What had just transpired was more than unusual. It was impossible. It was a complete reversal of the military's deeply ingrained hierarchy. Later that day, the whispers began to spread across the base. By the time Anya reported off duty, the story had already taken on a life of its own, morphing and growing with each retelling. In the chow hall, sailors leaned over their trays, their voices low. "You hear about what happened at the main gate?" "Yeah, the one about Thorne." "No way. He saluted a PFC first." "I swear to God, half the checkpoint saw it. My buddy was right there." The rumor mill was relentless, and it spread far beyond her control. Anya could feel eyes following her as she walked through the corridors. Soldiers would nudge each other, murmuring as she passed. She hated the attention, hated the spotlight it threw on her. She hadn't done anything heroic. She had just done her job. That night in the barracks, her roommate, a specialist named Torres, grinned like a cat who had cornered a canary. "You're famous," Torres teased, tossing a rolled-up sock across the room. "Private Sharma, the woman who made the Iceman salute." "Stop it," Anya muttered, meticulously unlacing her boots. "I'm serious," Torres said, laughing. "Do you have any idea how many people would kill for a moment like that? You'll be a legend in basic training stories by next month." Anya just shook her head. "I don't even know why he did it." Torres flopped back on her bunk. "Maybe because you didn't faint when he looked at you." Anya smirked despite herself, but the deep-seated unease lingered. She wasn't chasing recognition. She wanted respect, yes, but she wanted it to be earned through steady, consistent service, not through some unexplained anomaly that now threatened to define her entire career. Still, deep down, she replayed the salute over and over in her mind. The weight of it, the deliberateness, the way his piercing eyes had locked onto hers. There was a reason for it. She just didn't know what it was. The next morning, she was summoned. Her sergeant, a gruff, no-nonsense man named Staff Sergeant Daniels, stood with his arms crossed as she entered his office. His expression was, as always, unreadable. "Private Sharma," he said flatly, "Commander Thorne has requested you." Anya blinked, her mind struggling to process the words. "Requested me, Sergeant." Daniels's jaw flexed. "Personally, for a temporary detail. Don't ask me why. I don't know, and frankly, I don't care. But when a SEAL commander of his rank makes a personal request, you don't say no." His eyes narrowed. "You'll report to Building 12 at 0800 tomorrow." Anya's stomach dropped. Building 12 was the restricted compound, the nerve center where SEAL staff operated. It was the kind of place a private like her wasn't even supposed to look at for too long, let alone enter. "Yes, Sergeant," she said automatically, though her voice carried the tremor of disbelief. Danielle's gaze was hard as stone. "Don't screw this up, Sharma. You've been given a rare and unusual opportunity. Whatever that man sees in you, prove him right." Anya saluted and exited the office, her legs feeling numb. That night, sleep evaded her. She lay in her bunk staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. Why her? She wasn't exceptional. She wasn't top of her class in training. She hadn't deployed, hadn't earned any combat ribbons, hadn't even done anything more significant than stand her post at the dam gate. All she had was discipline, showing up, standing tall, and following protocol to the letter when others let their posture slack and their focus drift. Was that really enough to draw the attention of a man like Commander Thorne? Torres's voice drifted from the bunk across the room, soft in the darkness. "You're really quiet tonight." Anya hesitated, then admitted softly, "What if I don't belong there?" Torres rolled over, her silhouette faint in the dim light. "Anya, belonging isn't about your rank or your assignment. It's about showing up and doing the job better than anyone else expects you to." That's what he saw. That's why he saluted. Anya lay still, the words sinking into her chest like anchors. When dawn broke, she would find out if Torres was right. Because tomorrow, she wouldn't be the ignored gate guard anymore. Tomorrow, she would walk into Building 12 under the watchful eyes of the most feared and respected commander on the base, and she knew, with a certainty that was both terrifying and exhilarating, that nothing would ever be the same again. The early morning air carried the faint, briny scent of the harbor as Anya Sharma marched toward Building 12. Her combat boots struck the pavement with a steady, rhythmic cadence that matched the hammering of her own heart. The structure loomed ahead, starkly different from the other administrative offices on the base. It was squat, windowless, and radiated an aura of secrecy that was almost a physical presence. She paused at the entrance checkpoint, her spine ramrod straight. A Navy master-at-arms with a skeptical brow scanned her orders, his expression clearly communicating his doubt that a private had any legitimate business in this place. After verifying her credentials, he handed back the paper with a flat, unimpressed tone. "You're cleared. Follow the hallway to the end. Wait there until you're called." Inside, the air was cool and still, humming faintly with the buzz of fluorescent lights. The hallway smelled of strong coffee and oiled metal. Anya's posture stiffened even further as she walked, passing a series of closed doors marked with coded numbers and signs stamped with restricted access. Each step carried her further away from the familiar world of the main gate, deeper into a world that few privates ever glimpsed. She reached a small, sterile waiting area. The chairs lining the wall were empty except for her. A clock on the wall ticked with agonizing slowness, each second dragging out into an eternity. Anya folded her hands neatly in her lap, forcing her breath into a measured, controlled rhythm. After what felt like an hour, but was probably only 5 minutes, a door opened. "Private Sharma," a crisp voice called. Anya stood instantly, her shoulders squared. The officer who beckoned her was a lieutenant, young but with a hardened look in his eyes, as sharp and cold as razors. He said nothing more, only gestured for her to follow. Anya fell in a step behind him, her boots making no sound on the tiled floor. He led her down another hall and through a final door into an office that radiated quiet, immense power. Commander Thorne stood behind a large, uncluttered desk. He wasn't in his dress uniform this time. Instead, he wore fatigues, the sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms marked with faint, faded scars. His posture was relaxed, yet his presence filled the entire room. He looked up from a file he was reading and fixed her with that same unyielding, analytical gaze she remembered from the gate. "Private Sharma," he said, his voice an even, gravelly tone. "Sir," Anya replied, snapping a salute. Thorne returned it with a small, deliberate gesture, less dramatic than the one at the gate, but still imbued with a sense of purpose. He closed the file, leaned back in his chair, and studied her in silence. The pause stretched on until Anya's muscles screamed with tension, but she held her position, unmoving. Finally, he spoke. "Do you know why you're here?" "No, sir," she admitted, her voice steady. He nodded once, as if approving of her honesty. "I watched you at your post yesterday. Most privates treat gate duty like a punishment. They slouch. They cut corners. They let their focus drift. You didn't." Anya swallowed, her throat suddenly dry. "It's my assigned post, sir. I take my responsibilities seriously." "That's why I saluted you," he said, the words striking her with the force of a physical blow. She had replayed that moment 100 times, searching for some complex, hidden meaning. Now, it was laid bare with startling simplicity. "Respect isn't given based on rank, private," Thorne continued, his tone like gravel. "It's earned in the way you carry yourself when you think no one of consequence is watching. You stood your post like a soldier. You held your ground with unwavering discipline. That deserves recognition." Anya's chest tightened. She wanted to speak, to say thank you, but her voice caught in her throat. The validation was so direct, so powerful, it left her momentarily speechless. Thorne leaned forward, his expression hardening slightly. "But a salute is only a beginning. I want to see if that discipline you displayed at a gate can carry over into harder, more critical places." Her eyes widened. "Sir, you'll be assisting my staff. Clerical work, scheduling, delivering classified briefings, whatever is needed. But do not misunderstand me. This isn't busy work. Mistakes in this building cost more than simple embarrassment. They cost lives." The immense weight of his words pressed down on her like a physical force. Anya straightened her back even further, if that was possible. "Understood, sir." Thorne studied her for another long moment, his gray eyes seeming to peer directly into her soul. Then he gave a curt nod. "You will report here daily at 0700. Dismissed." The next few days blurred into a storm of meticulous details. Anya was assigned to a cramped desk just outside the main operations wing, a place that buzzed with a constant, low hum of activity. Officers strode past her with classified files clutched tightly under their arms. Radios crackled with coded chatter from field teams, and large whiteboards were covered with cryptic mission outlines and timelines. Anya's tasks, on the surface, seemed simple. Log entries, update personnel schedules, deliver sealed briefing folders from one office to another. Yet, she quickly realized the monumental stakes behind each piece of paper she handled. One wrong digit in a time slot could scramble an entire operation. One missignature on a request form could delay a critical deployment. She worked with painstaking, almost obsessive care, her pen strokes deliberate, her attention laser-focused. Thorne rarely addressed her directly, but she felt his presence constantly. He would pass her desk daily, his eyes glancing at her work with that same unreadable expression. He never offered praise, never scolded her, he just observed. And somehow, that silent scrutiny was worse than any shouted command. The other staff noticed her too. One petty officer, a man who had been on Thorne's staff for years, leaned over her desk one afternoon, lowering his voice. "Word is the commander handpicked you himself. No one has any idea why. Just don't screw it up." Anya forced a polite nod, though the words stung. She didn't want to be the source of resentment. She hadn't asked for this assignment, but she would not fail it. Late one evening, when most of the offices had emptied out, Anya remained at her desk, her eyes gritty from hours of combing through transfer logs. She spotted a tiny inconsistency. A mission departure time listed as 2,301 briefing, but 200 in another. Her pulse quickened. Which one was correct? She weighed her options. She could ignore it. Perhaps someone else would catch it. But if the wrong time went forward, it could unravel a complex operation before it even began. She rose from her chair, file in hand, and approached Thorne's office. The door was ajar, a sliver of lamplight spilling across the floor. He looked up as she entered. Private. His voice was calm, but edged with steel. Sir, she said, holding out the file. There's a discrepancy in the mission timing between these two documents. I didn't want to assume which was correct without confirming with you first. Thorne took the papers, his eyes scanning them quickly, then set them down. His gaze flicked back to her, unreadable as ever. You caught this? Yes, sir. He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. The silence stretched. Then, to her utter shock, the corner of his mouth curved into the faintest, almost imperceptible smile. Good eye. Just 2 words, barely more than grunt. Yet they lit a fire in her chest, a warmth that spread through her entire body. Thorne closed the file. Go get some rest, Sharma. You'll need it. Walking back to the barracks that night, Anya's steps felt lighter. It wasn't because she had been praised. It was about more than that. It was because she had proven, if only for a fleeting moment, that she belonged here. She had shown that her discipline wasn't confined to the monotonous duty of the gate, but could hold weight in the shadowed, high-stakes halls of Building 12. She knew that more challenges lay ahead, that the eyes on her would only grow sharper. But she also knew this. Commander Thorne had tested her, and she hadn't broken. For the first time since she had raised her hand to enlist, Private First Class Anya Sharma felt the faint, powerful spark of something more than just duty. She felt purpose. By the end of her first week in Building 12, Anya Sharma could feel the subtle shift in the air around her. It wasn't a dramatic change at first, just small things. The way other junior sailors would give her a second glance in the chow hall, a muttered comment she would catch as she passed in the corridor, a petty officer who would pause his conversation when she walked into the room. The whispers were spreading like wildfire, traveling faster than any official report ever could. Everyone on the base had heard the story by now. The commander, the legendary Thorne, had saluted her first. Anya hated the way those words seemed to cling to her, like a second uniform she hadn't asked to wear. She wanted to shake them off, to insist that it wasn't true, that people were exaggerating the moment. But she couldn't deny it. She had lived it. Thorne had stepped out of his SUV, stood before her at her post, and rendered a salute without a single word of explanation. And now, that single, unprecedented moment had become a base-wide legend. Back in the barracks, her roommate, Torres, smirked as she scrolled through her phone. You're trending, she teased, holding up a screen filled with a group chat full of memes. One was a crudely drawn cartoon of a towering commander saluting a traffic cone labeled PFC Sharma. Another had the caption, Respect isn't earned. It's Sharmat. Anya groaned, burying her face in her hands. This is ridiculous. Torres grinned, unfazed. No, this is power. Do you realize how rare it is for a private to be talked about at all? Most of us are ghosts until our first deployment. You're not a ghost anymore. I don't want to be talked about, Anya muttered, meticulously unlacing her boots. You don't get to choose that now, Torres replied, tossing her phone aside. You caught the commander's eye. Whether you like it or not, you're in the spotlight. Anya lay back on her bunk, staring at the sterile white ceiling. The salute had felt personal, a meaningful acknowledgement of her discipline. But the gossip was cheapening it, turning a moment of profound respect into a punchline. She didn't want fame. She wanted respect, the kind earned quietly, through consistent and flawless work, without any spectacle. Still, she couldn't ignore what was happening. The salute had marked her, and now the entire base was watching her every move, waiting to see if she would justify the commander's faith or crumble under the pressure. 2 days later, her sergeant called her into his office again. Staff Sergeant Daniels sat behind his desk, his expression as hard and unreadable as ever. But there was something different in his eyes today, something she couldn't quite place. "Private Sharma," he said, gesturing for her to sit. She obeyed, sitting stiff-backed in the chair. "You've been on Thorne's detail for a week now. I haven't received any complaints so far." "Thank you, Sergeant," Anya said carefully. Daniels leaned forward, lacing his thick fingers together. "Listen to me carefully. You're walking a very fine line right now. The commander sees something in you. Don't ask me what it is. But the rest of this base, they don't like it. They don't like seeing a private being singled out, especially by a man like him." Anya's stomach tightened. "I didn't ask for any of this, Sergeant." "I know you didn't," he said, his voice softening for the briefest of moments. "But perception is reality around here. Some will assume you're special. Some will assume you're a fluke. And some will want to see you fail just to prove a point, to prove that Thorne was wrong." Anya swallowed hard, the weight of his words pressing down on her. "What should I do?" Danielle's eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of something that looked like guidance. "Do your job. Do it better than anyone else. That's the only way you'll get through this." Anya nodded, a knot forming in her chest. The weight of expectation felt even heavier in the halls of Building 12. Officers who had once passed her with indifference now watched her more closely. She could feel it in their narrowed eyes, in their clipped, formal tones, in the way they would double-check the papers she handed them, as if searching for a mistake. It wasn't overt hostility, not yet. It was something colder, more insidious, skepticism. She responded with absolute perfection. Her reports were double and triple-checked for errors. Her memos were delivered ahead of schedule. Her posture remained unyielding, a silent testament to her discipline. She became invisible in the best possible way, efficient, reliable, and utterly without error. Still, the whispers followed her. She overheard 2 staff members talking in the hallway one afternoon. "Why her, though?" "Because Thorne sees potential," one asked. "Or because he's making a point," the other replied. "You salute a private in front of everyone. You're sending a message. Maybe it's not even about her at all." The words stung more than she wanted to admit. What if they were right? What if she wasn't chosen for who she was, but for what she represented? That night, lying in her bunk, Anya replayed the salute again in her mind. The precision of his gesture, the intensity in his eyes. No, it hadn't felt symbolic. It had felt personal. She refused to believe otherwise. One afternoon, as she delivered a briefing folder to Thorne's office, she found him alone, leaning over a large map scattered with red markers. He looked up when she entered, his eyes as sharp as ever. "On time," he said simply, taking the folder from her. "Yes, sir." She hesitated at the door, then gathered every ounce of her courage to speak. "Sir, may I ask you something?" He raised an eyebrow, a silent invitation. "Go ahead." "Why me?" she asked softly. The room fell silent. Thorne studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he set the folder aside. "Because discipline is a rare commodity, private. Anyone can shine when the stakes are high and the cameras are on. But only a select few stand tall when they think no one is watching. You did." Anya's throat tightened, the words hitting her with a force that took her breath away. Thorne's gaze held hers. "Don't waste it." She nodded, her voice too choked with emotion to reply. As she walked out his office, she knew the path ahead would be difficult. The salute was no longer just a rumor or a piece of gossip. It was a catalyst, an event that was actively reshaping her path in the Navy. Anya could feel it every time she put on her uniform, every time she walked into Building 12, every time a fellow soldier looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and resentment. She hadn't asked for this journey, but it was hers now. And deep down, a flicker of fierce determination burned brighter than her fear. If the entire base was watching her, then she would give them something worth watching. The hum of the fluorescent lights was a constant companion in the narrow hallways of Building 12. Anya Sharma balanced a stack of files against her chest, her boots clicking against the polished tile floor. Every folder she carried was marked with bold red stamps, confidential or restricted, staring up at her like small, constant warnings. She had been on this assignment for nearly 2 weeks, and the intense pressure hadn't eased in the slightest. If anything, it had sharpened to a razor's edge. This was a world away from gate duty. This was the nerve center of SEAL operations, where every single detail, no matter how small, mattered immensely. Clerical errors here didn't just mean a reprimand. They meant missions could be compromised and lives could be endangered. Anya never, ever forgot that. Her days began before dawn. She would wake in the quiet of the barracks, dress in the dark, and step out into the humid Virginia air as the base slowly stirred to life. By 0700 sharp, she was seated at her small, unassuming desk just outside Commander Thorne's office. At first, her tasks had seemed mundane, typing up schedules, organizing briefing materials, maintaining personnel logs. But she soon began to realize the immense weight of the information she was handling. A flight time adjusted by a few minutes could reroute an entire deployment. A change in the order of a meeting could mean one commander was briefed on critical intelligence before another. They were tiny ripples, but they cascaded outward, affecting the very rhythm of the Navy's most elite fighters. And Thorne noticed everything. He never hovered over her, never lectured her, but she felt his eyes on her like a constant, silent shadow. He would glance at her desk as he passed, sometimes giving a faint, almost imperceptible nod when her files were arranged with military precision, other times saying nothing at all. That silence was the most potent motivator of all. It kept her perpetually sharp. One afternoon, as Anya was delivering a folder to the operations wing, she overheard two officers talking from inside an open office. "Why is she still here?" One of them muttered, his voice low but laced with annoyance. "Thorne handpicked her," the other replied. "She's just a private, for God's sake. We've got senior staff with years of experience, and yet he trusts her with sensitive routing schedules." "You think that's an accident?" the second officer said, his tone cynical. Anya's chest tightened. She turned quickly and walked back down the hallway before they could notice her. The doubt from others gnawed at her. She didn't want to be seen as the commander's pet project or some kind of experiment. She wanted to be seen as competent in her own right. Later that week, her test came, though she didn't realize it at the time. She was reviewing a logistics memo for an upcoming training exercise when she spotted a tiny discrepancy. Two sets of coordinates were listed for a supply drop, only a few numbers apart, but they pointed to entirely different grid locations on the map. If left unchecked, the error could reroute an entire supply drop to the wrong site, leaving a team stranded without necessary equipment. Anya's pulse quickened. She could ignore it. It wasn't her report, and no one would blame her if she simply passed it along. But something in her gut, the same instinct for precision that made her stand so straight at the gate, screamed otherwise. She rose from her desk, memo in hand, and knocked on Thorne's office door. "Enter," came his clipped voice. She stepped inside, saluting quickly. "Sir, I found a discrepancy in this logistics memo. I wasn't sure which set of coordinates was correct." Thorne took the paper, his eyes scanning it in silence. He looked up, his gaze sharp and analytical. "You caught this?" "Yes, sir." He set the file down on his desk, leaned back in his chair, and regarded her steadily. The silence stretched until she thought she must have made a mistake by bothering him with such a small detail. Then, finally, he said, "Good." Most people would have passed it along without a second thought. Anya exhaled slowly, a wave of tension releasing from her chest. That night, as she lay awake in her bunk, she replayed his words in her mind. Just one word, "good." But coming from him, it felt heavier, more meaningful than any medal. Over time, the pattern repeated itself. Small, almost invisible details would cross her desk, each one a hidden test of her diligence. A flight manifest that was missing a name. A supply request with mismatched inventory codes. A meeting note that had the wrong time zone listed. Each time, Anya caught it. Each time, she either corrected it or flagged it for clarification. And each time, Thorne's expression gave nothing away. Until one evening, as she was gathering the files for the next morning's first briefing, Thorne approached her desk. "Do you know why these small things matter, Private?" he asked, his voice low. Anya straightened instinctively. "Because small mistakes can lead to bigger ones, sir." Thorne shook his head slightly. "No, it's because lives ride on them. A misplaced coordinate isn't just ink on a page. It's a helicopter landing in the wrong valley. It's a team waiting in the dark for a resupply that never comes. Discipline in the details is discipline in battle." Anya's throat tightened. "Yes, sir." He studied her a moment longer, his gaze intense. "Don't you ever forget that." Word of Anya's expanding role in Building 12 continued to spread. Some sailors began to respect her, while others resented her even more. She felt it in their quick glances, in the hushed conversations that would fall silent the moment she entered a room. But she also began to notice something else. The younger soldiers, the new privates and recruits fresh from basic training, started to look at her differently. It wasn't with envy, but with something that looked like hope. She caught one whispering to another in the mess line. "That's her." The one Thorne saluted. It still embarrassed her, but it also lit a quiet fire in her chest. If she was going to be seen, then she wanted to be seen as worthy of that respect. One late night, as she was organizing files, she realized she hadn't been back to the main gate in weeks. And oddly enough, she missed it. The hum of cars, the steady rhythm of checking IDs, the simple, profound discipline of standing her post. That was where she had learned her most important lessons, where she had been tested in silence. Now, the test was louder, sharper, and infinitely heavier. But she would meet it the same way she always had, by standing tall, by refusing to falter, and by carrying her discipline in every single breath, whether anyone noticed or not. The office was quiet after hours, the only sounds being the low hum of the computers and the faint, rhythmic scratch of Anya's pen against paper. Outside, the base had settled into its nighttime rhythm, the sound of boots fading down hallways, doors clicking shut, voices lowering to murmurs. But inside Building 12, Anya sat at her desk, her shoulders squared, as she sorted the final stack of reports for the morning's first briefing. She was tired, her eyes burning from the strain, but her focus didn't waver. Every page mattered. She checked dates, compared signatures, and flagged one report that used yesterday's timestamp instead of today's. They were small, meticulous tasks, but she knew by now that in this world, small things were never really small. The door to Commander Thorne's office opened behind her. Anya straightened instinctively as he stepped out. He wore his fatigued uniform, the sleeves rolled high on his forearms, his expression as unreadable as ever. In one hand, he carried the day's finished folder. "You're still here, Sharma?" he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir," Anya replied quickly, her pen pausing mid-stroke. Thorne studied her for a moment, his gaze analytical. "Come in." She followed him into his office. The room was sparse but commanding. Maps were pinned to large corkboards. A few framed medals hung on the wall, and stacks of mission folders were arranged in neat piles on a side table. Thorne moved with his usual deliberate precision, setting the folder aside and motioning for her to take a seat. Anya hesitated. She wasn't sure she belonged in a chair in this room, but she obeyed, her back straight, her hands clasped in her lap. For a long moment, Thorne said nothing. He leaned against the front of his desk, his arms folded, his eyes fixed on her. It was the same intense stare that could silence rooms full of seasoned officers. "Do you know why I really saluted you that day at the gate?" he asked at last. Anya blinked. The question hit her harder than she expected. It was the one she had replayed in her head for weeks, the one that was whispered in mess halls and barracks. And now, he was asking her directly. "No, sir," she admitted. "I've wondered." Thorne's gaze sharpened. "Most people in the military think respect comes from rank. They're wrong. Rank is just an assignment, a position on an organizational chart. True respect is earned in the moments when no one is watching." Anya sat very still, her heart thudding against her ribs. "You stood at that gate," Thorne continued, his voice low and steady, "with more discipline than I've seen from men with twice your age and 3 times your rank. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You weren't performing for a superior officer. You just did the job with absolute precision, like it mattered. Because it does matter. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle in the quiet room. That's why I saluted you. Not because of who you were on paper, but because of how you carried yourself when you thought no one important noticed. Anya swallowed hard, her throat tightening with an emotion she couldn't name. Thank you, sir, she said softly, the words feeling small and inadequate compared to the enormity of what he had just given her. Thorne pushed off the desk and began to pace slowly in front of her. Do you know how many times I've seen good men die because of one careless mistake? A name misspelled on a manifest, a single digit swapped in a coordinate. They're tiny things, things most people would shrug at. And then suddenly, you got a team waiting for a supply drop that never comes, or landing in a valley crawling with insurgents because someone wrote east instead of west. His voice was calm, but Anya could feel the controlled fury beneath the surface, a fury honed to a sharp edge over years of battle and loss. Discipline, he said, turning back to face her, isn't about shining your boots or standing tall for inspection. Discipline is about knowing that every single detail, every second of focus could mean the difference between life and death for someone else. Anya nodded, her chest tight. She thought of the reports she had corrected, the small errors she had flagged. For the first time, she understood the true life-or-death stakes behind her small victories at her desk. Sir, she said carefully, why are you telling me this? Thorne's eyes softened almost imperceptibly. Because you already understand it, even if you don't realize it yet. You proved it at that gate, and you've been proving it every single day since you arrived here. My job is to sharpen that instinct in you, not to smother it. The words lodged in Anya's chest like anchors. For so long, she had doubted whether she truly belonged in this role. She had worried that she was just a token, a symbol Thorne was using to make a point to others. But now she saw it differently. He wasn't using her. He was testing her. And in his own stoic, demanding way, he was teaching her. Sir, she asked after a pause, do you regret it? Saluting me, I mean. Thorne allowed a faint, almost imperceptible smile to touch his lips. No, but you should know that it made things harder for you. People will doubt you. They'll resent you. Some will even root for you to fail just to prove me wrong. You'll have to be twice as sharp, twice as disciplined to silence them. Anya straightened in her chair, a newfound resolve hardening her expression. Then I'll be twice as sharp. For the first time since she had met him, Thorne's smile deepened, actually reaching his eyes. Good. The days that followed felt different. Anya moved through her duties with a new sense of clarity. She no longer saw the files as mere paper, but as the veins of a living, breathing system. She checked each one with unwavering precision, her mind echoing Thorne's words. Lives ride on them. And though the whispers from her peers hadn't vanished entirely, they no longer cut as deep. She overheard one lieutenant scoff to another. She's still just a gate girl. Anya kept walking, her head held high. If they wanted her to prove herself, she would. Not with words, not with gossip, but with unshakable, undeniable consistency. That was her power. Late one night, Torres found her still awake in their barracks room, meticulously polishing her boots by the dim light of her desk lamp. Again, Torres said, half amused, "You're obsessed." Anya looked up, brush in hand. Not obsessed, disciplined. Torres chuckled, climbing in her bunk. Same thing. But Anya only smiled faintly, hearing Thorne's voice in her head. Discipline isn't about the shine. It's about the life it protects. She understood now. And for the first time since the salute that had changed everything, she no longer felt like an imposter. She felt like a soldier with a purpose. Morning light filtered through the barracks windows as Anya Sharma meticulously laced her boots, the tight, even loops of familiar ritual that kept her grounded. Building 12 awaited, its maze of narrow halls and humming computers already alive with the quiet, focused movement of the day's shift. She paused for a moment, listening to the faint shuffle of footsteps and the low murmur of voices beyond her door. She had been assigned here for nearly a month now, and every single day had reinforced one undeniable truth. This assignment was more than just a job. It was a proving ground. The salute at the gate, once a fleeting, shocking moment, had evolved into a defining symbol for her peers. Some saw her as lucky, others as privileged. Some whispered with admiration, others with a quiet, simmering resentment. Anya felt it in every quick glance, every hushed exchange, every double take as she walked past. By now, she had learned not to let it shake her. Discipline wasn't only about maintaining accuracy in paperwork or precision in schedules. It was about bearing, composure, and the silent, steady assertion of competence. At the operations wing, she noticed that younger privates often lingered near her desk, ostensibly to ask questions about logistics or scheduling. However, Anya quickly realized they were there to observe, to watch her work. Their curiosity was palpable. One morning, a young recruit named Daniels, a 19-year-old from North Carolina, hesitated at her cubicle, nervously shifting his weight from foot to foot. Private Sharma," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. I heard you were, the one Commander Thorne saluted. Anya looked up from her work, her expression carefully neutral. Yes, she said simply. His eyes widened slightly. Wow. Respect isn't given by rank, Anya said, finishing the thought that was clearly on his mind. It's earned by how you carry yourself when no one is watching. That's all it was. Daniels nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of her words. I guess I've been slacking off at the gate myself, he admitted, his cheeks flushing. Then start today, Anya said, her tone firm but not unkind. Discipline is cumulative. It builds over time. Nobody notices the small things until they're the only things that matter. He left with his jaw set, a newfound determination in his eyes. Anya leaned back in her chair, a strange realization dawning on her. She had just passed on the very lesson Thorne had taught her, and it felt important. The influence, however, wasn't universal. Some officers and senior staff still regarded her with thinly veiled skepticism. Why does he even keep her around? She overheard one lieutenant mutter in the hallway, his voice low but carrying. She's just a private. Anya heard it, of course, but she no longer allowed herself to flinch. She responded with action, not with argument. Her reports were checked and rechecked until they were flawless. Her schedules were meticulously maintained. Memos were delivered with an accuracy down to the smallest digit. When errors appeared elsewhere in the system, she corrected them silently and efficiently, never seeking recognition or praise. Her work began to speak louder than any gossip could. One afternoon, a critical situation emerged. A last-minute change in personnel threatened to derail an entire operational briefing. Names were mismatched on the rosters, rooms were double-booked, and the timelines were suddenly impossible. Senior staffers scrambled, muttering curses under their breath as they tried to untangle the mess. Anya took a deep, steadying breath and pulled out her checklist. She moved quickly and quietly, reallocating rooms, adjusting schedules on the fly, and personally notifying the affected officers of the changes. By the time Commander Thorne arrived for the briefing, every detail was perfectly aligned. The chaos had been smoothed over as if it had never existed. Thorne entered the room, his eyes immediately noting the calm efficiency of the office. His gaze found hers for just a brief moment before he gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. No words were exchanged, but she understood. That evening, back at her desk, Anya reflected on the day. The salute at the gate had been a spark. Now, it had become a responsibility. Younger soldiers were looking to her for guidance, whether she had sought it or not. She was setting a standard, demonstrating through her actions that competence and composure mattered more than rank or recognition. Even those who resented her influence couldn't deny her unwavering consistency. Yet, the resentment was still present. She overheard one senior staffer whispering to another, "She's getting far too much attention. A private shouldn't be influencing operations in this way." The other replied, his voice a low rumble, "Don't forget that Commander Thorne chose her. We follow his lead, not the gossip." Anya didn't respond. She merely returned to her work. It wasn't her job to convince them of her worth. Her job was to perform with unyielding discipline. Late that week, Thorne approached her desk. His presence carried its usual weight, and she instinctively straightened her posture. "Private Sharma," he said quietly. "Yes, sir. I've noticed how the other soldiers are looking at you now," he said, his gaze steady. Some with respect, some with skepticism, and some with resentment. "Yes, sir," Anya replied, her voice even. "Good," he said, pausing for a moment. "If you can survive that, you could survive anything. Leadership isn't about rank or medals. It's about influence. And influence is earned through action, not through words." Anya nodded, absorbing the profound lesson. She realized that being singled out for recognition at the gate wasn't simply a reward. It was a responsibility. A private standing tall could shape the behavior of their peers and the culture of a unit without ever saying a word. The next morning, she was unexpectedly returned to the gate for a routine inspection as part of a rotating schedule. Some of the older soldiers were astonished to see her there, seemingly back from the high-stakes world of Building 12. "Back at the gate, huh?" one muttered under his breath. Anya simply raised her chin, scanned IDs with meticulous care, and treated every single vehicle as if it carried the most valuable cargo in the world. Younger privates watched her, and quietly, almost unconsciously, they began to mimic her posture, her methodical approach. By the evening, she realized that the gate had become more than just a post. It had become a classroom. Every salute she returned, every precise ID check she performed, every single moment of her unwavering discipline was a lesson, not just for her, but for anyone who was willing to watch. At the end of the week, Anya felt a quiet, profound pride. She was still a private. She still answered to the commander. But she was no longer just someone Thorne had saluted. She was someone other soldiers could look to as an example. A young recruit approached her quietly at the end of a shift. "Private Sharma," he said, hesitating. "Thank you. I've been slacking, and seeing how you do this, I think I finally get it now. Discipline really matters." Anya smiled faintly. "Then start now. Not for me, not for him, but for yourself. That's what counts." The young recruit nodded, leaving with a newfound determination. Anya watched him go, the sun setting low over the horizon. She understood, finally, that leadership wasn't about rank, medals, or recognition. It was about influence, the quiet, consistent shaping of those around you. And she had begun to shape the base itself, silently and steadily. That night, lying in her bunk, she reflected on her journey. The commander's salute had been a spark, but the real lesson lay in the responsibility that followed. She realized she had earned the attention not through luck, but through discipline, precision, and the refusal to falter. And now, others were following her lead. Whether they liked it or not, the weight was heavy, but it felt right. Anya Sharma had become more than just a private. She had become an example. The morning air was crisp, a rare breeze cutting through the usual Virginia humidity as it rolled in off the water. Anya Sharma adjusted her patrol cap, feeling the familiar weight of her boots on the pavement, the low hum of the base stirring to life behind her. She had been temporarily rotated back to the main gate from Building 12, a move that had surprised many, including herself. But today felt different. Today, every detail, every motion, every single moment seemed to carry a significance that went far beyond routine. Her assignment in Building 12 had grown far beyond checking IDs and logging paperwork. For weeks, she had been trusted with sensitive files, critical memos, and the small yet deadly serious tasks that kept the elite SEAL operations running smoothly. Every day had been a masterclass in discipline, vigilance, and the art of quiet leadership. Today, all of that training would be put to the ultimate test, though she did not yet know it. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly. She was midway through her shift when a familiar black SUV rolled up slowly to her checkpoint. Her heart skipped a beat. She recognized the vehicle immediately. It was Commander Thorne's. The same vehicle, the same aura of quiet, formidable authority she had first encountered weeks ago. The driver handed over an ID without speaking. Anya scanned it, confirmed the credential, and handed it back with her usual crisp professionalism. "You're good to go, sir." But Thorne did not drive on. He stepped out of the vehicle, his presence once again filling the gate with an invisible, palpable pressure. Anya straightened instantly, her body snapping into a salute as he approached. Thorne returned the salute, his motion as deliberate and precise as it had been on that first day. But today, there was something different in his expression, a subtle approval, a quiet acknowledgement of the journey she had completed since their first encounter. He spoke softly, his voice a low rumble that cut through the morning air. "Private Sharma, follow me." Her pulse quickened. Without a word, she obeyed, falling in a step beside him as he led her to a nearby administrative building. The hallways inside were empty, the quiet amplifying the sound of their footsteps on the tiled floor. They reached an office she had never entered before, a large conference room lined with high-ranking officers and senior staff. The moment they stepped inside, all eyes immediately found her. Anya froze for a second. The whispers, the skeptics, the doubters, every single one of their gazes fell upon her. Thorne stepped forward, placing a hand briefly on her shoulder in a gesture that was both supportive and commanding. "This is Private First Class Anya Sharma," he announced, his voice ringing with authority. "She has been on my detail for over a month. During that time, she has demonstrated exceptional discipline, unwavering precision, and remarkable composure under intense scrutiny and pressure. I am here today to formally recognize her outstanding performance." A profound silence fell over the room. Anya's chest tightened. She had never sought recognition. She had never wanted the attention, only the responsibility. Yet here it was, undeniable and real, offered not as a simple reward, but as a formal acknowledgement of her earned standing among them. Staff Sergeant Daniels, her own gruff sergeant, stepped forward, a rare nod of approval on his face. "Private Sharma, you've set a new standard for privates on this base. Your diligence and your discipline have not gone unnoticed. Today, we recognize you formally with the Commanding Officer's Commendation for exceptional duty." Anya's eyes widened. The words echoed in her mind. Commendation, exceptional duty, recognition. But she felt more grounded than elated. This wasn't a medal for show. This was a confirmation of everything she had already come to know deep in her bones. Discipline mattered. Precision mattered. Quiet leadership mattered. Thorne leaned slightly toward her, his voice meant only for her. "Remember, Sharma, this isn't about pride. It's about responsibility. You have influence now. Use it wisely. Set the example. Protect those around you, especially when no one is watching." Anya nodded, absorbing the immense gravity of his words. The applause that followed was polite at first, but then grew into something genuine. Fellow privates in the back offered proud nods. Officers she had worked for gave her brief, respectful smiles. And even those who had once doubted her seemed to acknowledge the undeniable truth of her abilities. Anya realized in that moment that respect wasn't something that could be demanded. It was earned quietly and consistently, day after day, until even the most hardened skeptics could no longer ignore it. She accepted the commendation with a small, humble bow, her salute crisp and perfect. She didn't feel superior. She felt accountable. Thorne's eyes met hers again. In that shared gaze, there was no pretense, no expectation beyond what she had already proven herself capable of, just a profound sense of acknowledgement and trust. After the ceremony, she returned to Building 12. Her tasks awaited, just as demanding as they had been before. But something fundamental had shifted. Every memo, every file, every scheduling detail now carried a different kind of weight. Not just because mistakes could cost lives, but because she had earned her place in a world where her decisions truly mattered. A younger recruit approached her desk cautiously later that day. "Private Sharma," he said, his eyes wide with admiration. I want to do what you do. How do you stay so calm, so focused, so respected?" Anya smiled faintly, the memory of Thorne's words echoing in her mind. "Discipline isn't show. It's quiet. It's steady. You do the job correctly, even when no one sees you. You carry that into every single task, no matter how small. That's how respect is earned. The recruit nodded, taking her advice to heart. Anya realized that her influence now extended far beyond the walls of Building 12, far beyond the main gate. She was shaping behavior, instilling discipline, and setting a standard that would ripple across the entire base. That evening, Anya returned to the gate one last time. The sun was setting, bathing the asphalt in a warm, amber light. She adjusted her patrol cap, checked IDs with the same meticulous care, and moved with the precision she had demonstrated from her very first day. She felt grounded, deeply connected to the place where her improbable journey had begun, the site of the first silent recognition of her potential. Thorne's SUV pulled up again, but this time she wasn't startled. She greeted him with a salute that was steady and confident. He returned it with that same deliberate, meaningful motion and then gave a single, knowing nod. It was a simple gesture, yet it was now layered with a shared history. It was no longer a test, no longer a mystery. It was an acknowledgement between two soldiers. Walking back to the barracks that night, Anya reflected on her journey. She had started as a private assigned to the most monotonous post on the base, overlooked and underestimated. But her unwavering discipline, her relentless vigilance, and her quiet commitment had earned her the respect of the most formidable SEAL commander on the base. She had faced scrutiny, whispers, and skepticism, and had emerged stronger, more confident, and fully aware of the immense responsibility that recognition carried. The salute at the gate had been a spark. The test in Building 12 had been a fire. And now, the commendation, the influence she wielded, and the trust she had earned were the solid ground on which she stood. She knew the journey wasn't over. Discipline and responsibility were lifelong commitments. Mistakes could still happen, and every decision would have consequences. But she had proven herself capable of meeting the weight of that expectation. She was no longer just Anya Sharma, a private at the gate. She was a soldier, a model, and a quiet force shaping her world. And in that quiet strength, she had found something more profound than recognition or medals. She had found her purpose. As night fell and the stars emerged above the base, Anya looked up, her boots dusty from a day of duty, her uniform neat, her posture straight. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear the faint chatter of younger soldiers, their footsteps echoing, the living rhythm of a base that was her home. She smiled softly. Discipline, respect, influence. She carried them all now, not for herself, but for those who would follow. And for the first time, she fully understood what Commander Thorne had seen in her from the very beginning. The boundless potential in someone who dared to stand tall, even when no one was watching. The gate, once a symbol of monotony, had become her proving ground, and she had triumphed.